Good afternoon, and we welcome you here in Blanco, Texas on May the 14th. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My name is Martha Hurton, and I am part of the Oral History Interview Project for the Blanco Library. And I have the distinct honor of sitting here today with Rick Calzoncit. And I've known Rick for many years, and I've tried to figure out how I wanted to classify Rick. And what I see in Rick is simply the shining future of Blanco. Rick, we're glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
How did you come about the name Rick?
Well, when I was younger, it was always Ricky. Nobody could ever pronounce my name right, my full name.
And so your full name is?
Ricardo.
Ricardo.
Yeah.
A middle name?
No. There's only one in my family, is my oldest brother, Jesse, who in Mexico you usually get the maiden name of your mother, and you get the last name of your father. Well, the maiden name in Mexico usually is the last name, which becomes the middle name, which is Emeterio, and that's how, or Martinez. But my brother Jesse ended up getting my dad's middle name, Emeterio, which was because he was junior. So that's how he ended up with the middle name, and my brother Eddie got my mom's last name.
That is an amazing way of retaining that type of heritage.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. How many in your family, Rick?
There's 7 of us. 4 boys, 3 girls.
Where do you fit in line?
I am number 5.
Number 5. You're down the line.
Yeah, a little bit.
So let me see. How would you classify yourself in the family? Did you do some rebel rousing? Did you get along with everybody?
Yeah, well, I guess you could say, yeah. I mean, I wasn't the best of kids. I never let my parents know I was in trouble.
That was usually a good thing to not let.
Right. Yeah, so as far as in my mom's eyes, I was a saint. But my brothers and sisters knew how much trouble I got in, though.
Now, why do you say in your mom's eyes you were a saint?
Well, just like any mom, their kids is the light of their life.
So who kept you in line the most?
My brothers. I have 2 older brothers that in my house there was no nonsense. You never talked back to your parents. You never even thought about it. It's just the way it was. And it's a respect thing. I mean, my dad instilled it in me, and when you see your mom work as hard as your dad, the same place for 28 years, it's just instilled in you in most Hispanic houses or Mexican houses.
When I saw you the other day and to talk about doing this interview, I asked you one question: why Blanco? And you said it wasn't my choice.
Right.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, because when my dad first started coming to the United States, he would jump the train. And when you jump a train, if it stops where you want it to stop, then you get off there. But sometimes my dad would have to come all the way to San Antonio and have to walk all the way back to Hondo, where he would work when he was a younger man. I want to say maybe by the age of 10 he was doing this.
Leaving Mexico by hopping a train.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yeah.
That young.
Yeah. It was I got to thank him before he passed away for making such a big sacrifice, because me at 10 years old, I did not have the life he did. I didn't have the pressure of having to work to help my mother support the family back home, and having the scare of being such a young man and trying to have all these pressures on you. Of course, I had school and everything, but it's nothing what he had.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned your mother working also. What did she do?
She, when they were younger, you know, when she finally came over with him, they did a lot of ranch work. Like one of their first jobs when they came to Blanco was working for Mr. McLean at the
Yes.
at the milk farm, and then later on they went next door, and they worked for Clyde Moore. I don't know if you know him. Yeah,
I've heard the Moore name.
Yeah, he had a same deal. But when, like my mom was saying, when they got rid of the cows or whatever, they had to go to do something else, and they just did odd jobs here and there till my dad had worked for President LBJ in Stonewall for about a year or two.
Okay, so we have to slow down right there.
Okay.
Now, you just don't throw something out and say, my dad worked for LBJ, and leave it hanging there.
Okay.
So why don't you explain that to us a little bit? Because, that's something to be very proud of.
Right. Well, my dad, along with about 7 other hands, other Mexicans that Mr. LBJ had on his ranch out in Stonewall, my dad had a big station wagon at the time. So he was kind of like, would drive them back and forth from Johnson City to Stonewall. And at one time, it was funny how my mom explains it, but he was going to help them get their papers organized so that they can become citizens. And they ended up getting busted one time in Johnson City when they ended up the immigration, because my mom had already had my oldest sister and my oldest brother.
Here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's only one in my family that wasn't born in the United States, and that was because of this incident.
That you're telling us?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. I don't want to stop.
Okay. Well, my dad was working for him, and they tried to tell him, well, we work for Mr. LBJ, and the immigration officer said, well, okay, let's, who here has family, what's going on? And they were like, well, we got to take you. It doesn't matter. So they take my dad to my mom, and my mom's telling them, they're asking them, do you have birth certificates? Would you got anything? She's like, well, no, I'm not from here. She goes, well, we're going to have to let you stay, but because you have 2 kids that were born here.
Right.
And so they let them stay. Later on, my mom was pregnant with my other older brother, Eduardo. And they were trying to get the papers done, this and that, and because of that incident, my dad no longer worked for LBJ. Something got mixed up in there, and they ended up going back to Mexico for a little while. She was still pregnant with my older brother, Eddie. She ended up he's the only one that was born over there.
Back in Mexico.
Right.
Did you get the feeling that because he was with LBJ, that, with the immigration, they did a little bit of an embarrassment, they didn't want that showing on LBJ as to why this all suddenly he couldn't work for him anymore?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I never really got to talk to my dad about it. He just mentioned it a couple of times, when you're sitting around with your older sons and you can have a beer with your dad by then.
Special time.
Right.
Special time.
He'd mention it every now and then, but he never had any animosity towards it. He had wished that he had gotten his papers and everything organized so that he could be here legally. Because the process is it's long. I think my mom said it ended up taking like 3 years.
To get the papers.
For them to get.
That's what I want to ask you also, Rick. How was it expressed to you by your parents? Was about the desire to be here in the United States and yet retain your Hispanic heritage? Right.
Well, my dad said it one time, here in America, everything's not taken for granted, but almost. When you hear people say the American dream, we're thinking big house, big cars. But for people like my father, the American dream was just to have your family and everything, where you can do whatever it is you want. That's what his dream was.
To simply be here.
Yes, that was the American dream.
If he had stayed in Mexico, what would life have been like?
Oh, that's a hard one. My dad is from a small town in Mexico. It's a mining town.
Do you know the name?
Palau. Palau.
Okay.
Palau, Coahuila.
Palau.
Coahuila.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's about, from where my mother's hometown is, which is Nueva Rosita, Coahuila, it's probably about a 2-hour drive. And a lot of those towns are mining towns. And it's just...
So did he work in the mines?
No.
Never.
No, because like I said, when he was probably about the age 10 or 11, he might have been a little older than that, but he was coming over here to do whatever he had to.
He'd already made a choice, it sounds like.
Right.
To come here.
Yeah.
Looking ahead for what he hoped to have in her family.
Exactly.
How was your mother about all of it?
My mom, I don't know, she's just tough. She's an old school, what your typical old school Mexican women are.
Okay, explain that to me, please.
God and your family. And that's what we were about.
You can't beat that.
You can't. And that's why you see me in church.
Yes, I do.
You see where I sit. When we were younger, I remember that's where we would sit when we'd go into the church.
I didn't know that, Rick.
That's kind of like my seat. It's hard for me to move from there.
You should not move from there.
I'm not.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, Rick. You're continuing on.
Yeah, so she's just tough. I mean, when you go to Mexico and you see the women there, it's like, how do I put it without sounding dumb, but they do the house, the cleaning, the kids, and all that stuff, and the man goes to work.
And the man goes to work.
Right.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's not in Mexico, it's not like over here where you get paid and everything well. Over there, you have to make do with very little.
Very little. And
for a woman to have to do all that and not complain about it and not worry, this or that. There were 7 of us in our house, and I can remember when, we'd have dinner. You better be the first one.
At the table?
Yeah, because I like to eat when I was younger.
Yeah.
That's probably why I'm as big as I am now. But and you'll see in the picture, I wasn't always this big. It caught up with me. But no, my mom's tough. She's just an awesome woman. And
sounds like she has a tremendous amount of strength.
Yes.
Inner strength.
She'd still be working at Claypex right now if we hadn't talked her into retirement.
Really?
Yeah.
And what did she do at Claypex?
She, well, let me knock this out real quick. Going back to when my dad wanted the papers, I didn't know. I had known that they had always worked for Claypex. They worked for him for 28 years. Oh. But I didn't know that Bob and Jim Claypex, the brothers.
Yes.
I didn't know that their father and their grandmother or mother was the one who started Claypex Greenhouses. They had started it, Mr. Claypex, John Claypex, I believe was his name.
Yes.
Yes,
Right.
John Claypex. They'd be selling wood on the side of the road, and she'd be selling her plants. Well, eventually people wanted more plants than they did this. My mom was saying, yeah, she started off with the little bitty greenhouse, and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And Mr. Claypex, John Claypex, is the one who introduced my dad to a lawyer and started the whole process of becoming legal.
That is an amazing connection.
Yeah.
As I'm listening to you, what I'm hearing from you is to hear your family struggle coming here, getting here, and then to hear you talk about the older Claypex,
good
also
people,
struggling
yes,
to start their life.
That whole family is awesome. We still talk to Michael and Jimmy Claypex, young Jimmy and Robert. See them all the time. We see all of them, but. Yeah, no, that's a good family.
Do you travel back to Mexico?
I haven't in about 5 years, and only because it's just different.
Tell me how.
Well,
Some I hear, but I like your version.
right. Um, the last time we went, I'm not your average size Mexican.
Okay.
Because in Mexico, when you get up in the morning, even as a toddler, you get up, you drink coffee. Well, we didn't have coffee when I was young. So
you drink coffee?
In Mexico, they do. I remember my cousins, they'd be sitting there eating breakfast in the morning and having coffee. I'm like, y'all have water or milk? Because that's what we had when I was growing up.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, no wonder I'm like a whole foot and a half taller than all my cousins and stuff. And but also the way everything is it's just different. Eating habits, everything. Here you have an abundance of everything, and over there you have a lot of everything, but you just don't have the. I guess when I was younger, the money to just go out and eat every night if you wanted,
right,
or every other night, whatever the case may be. But it's just different.
How does it, when you've gone back to Mexico and you see that lifestyle, the struggle, then you're back here in the States living here. How do you feel about all that?
Well, you don't, unless you like really pay attention, you don't see the struggle. You know what I mean?
I do.
But
I do.
I wasn't totally ignorant to everything that was going on. I could see, that my family over there is big. It's just I don't know how to say it.
You're doing good.
You just make do. And when I go over there and I see, my cousins, everything is awesome. We go, we have a good time. But unfortunately, the last time I went and the time before that was a death in the family. Yeah, I had lost my grandmother before that, and then my aunt was the last one to pass away over there, and my uncle was the one who passed on my mom's side, passed away before my grandmother.
How do you feel about the news that we hear coming from Mexico, that it sounds with the danger that we're hearing?
Right.
What do you feel about that?
It doesn't bother me much because I know that in Mexico, like any other country, you're going to have bad people and you're going to have good people.
You're right.
And the hometown where my mom grew up, they're hard-working people. I mean, it's an everyday deal. If we could just get past the border without any problem, we'd be fine. But you see a big guy like me, it's almost like somebody's going to want to antagonize something, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just something that I try to avoid, because I have 2 girls of my own and my wife here, that unless something, God forbid, I lose another family member over there, then I'll go to the funeral and stuff like that. But I've been wanting to go, but it's been about 5 years since I've been down there. And I've been wanting to go. My mom and my sisters go all the time.
So now,
and they say it's great.
It's great. Tell me how far you go back with the knowledge that you have. I've heard you talk grandmother. Do you have any memory of great-grandparents?
Yes. Well, I don't have any memory of my great-grandparents. I only hear the stories that my mom has told me of my great-grandmother.
Best place to tell a story
right.
is today. Can you tell us what?
Yeah. My great-grandmother and my grandmother. My grandmother was probably 9, 10 years old. I don't know if you ever heard of Zapata. He was a revolutionary from Mexico that helped fight the Civil War back in the day. I know you've probably heard of Pancho Villa.
Yes.
Okay, it was around the same time. The only difference was one was further north in Mexico and one was further south. They were same purpose because the government was hoarding the gold and money and everything at the time,
right,
and they were wanting it. The president at the time was just wanting it, and I can remember my mom sitting down and telling us when my grandmother was little, in Rosita, where my mom is from, there's a hill, they call it La Loma, and that's where the Zapatistas, Zapata and his crew, would gather at times, and my grandmother and my great-grandmother would have food. Well, Chinamen and other races at the time were still there,
Right.
and stuff, and they wouldn't accept money, a certain kind of money. You had to pay them in gold and stuff.
In gold.
Yes. Well, at that time, the Zapatistas and Pancho Villa and his crew, they had their own like currency. So
Oh.
my grandmother and my great grandmother would accept that currency, and they would feed these men, and
No questions asked.
no questions asked. It was just done. I mean, and they accepted it. So, but my mom says the Chinese that were serving their food and stuff, they would only accept gold and silver coins.
Right.
And of course, the government had all that money, and these guys were like, I guess you could say, like guerrillas, what we would call now. They're fighting like a revolution or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
They had to make their own currency because they weren't with the government. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
And that's how they're still. I used to collect Mexican money, kind of like history, because a lot of the paper money that they have, it's got soldiers and stuff, and it's almost like a story in the deal. It's not like our currency where it's, you see a $1 bill, you know what's on it.
Right.
A 20, you know what's on it. Their money, and it's always changing all the time.
How do you feel about that?
I like it.
Because what you just said is it does tell a story.
Right, right. And I made a trip with my mom's, well, not my mom, my aunt's church in Mexico.
Uh-huh.
We went to Distrito Federal, Mexico City, Mexico. That city is huge, by the way. And at the time, on one of the paper bills, there's a picture, and I was like, man. And my mom's like, yeah, that picture is here in this city. I was like, no way. So we went, and I had my picture taken beside it. It's awesome.
I bet that was.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That had to be. You know, I'm listening to you, Rick, and what I'm hearing is that your family has come to America, but yet, without question, they have held on to their memories of their heritage. They've instilled it. I can see it in you. They've
Yeah.
instilled it in you, and I have no doubt that you are instilling this into your children.
Yeah.
And you seem to be extremely proud, and you should be.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'd like to. I'm not prideful, but I have pride in my my Mexican heritage. And if you go to my closet, you'll see a lot of green, white, red in there.
Good, good.
Yeah.
It's no different than Barney. We were speaking about this earlier. Is that my husband has German roots. I have German roots. We've learned a lot about that heritage recently, and you do feel a sense of pride,
Right.
when you learn that background.
Right.
And what you're, as far back as you're going and talking about the revolution,
Yeah.
very interesting. Very interesting.
I thought it was pretty cool.
Growing up here in let's talk about Blanco.
Okay.
Tell me how you saw life in Blanco as a young boy.
Oh man, most of my young life went by pretty quick, especially during the school year. A lot of my memories are summertime here in Blanco because we have the river. Me and my little brother Salvador, we lived at the river.
I heard about that.
As soon as we get up in the morning, we were at the park.
Yep, I heard about that.
Sun was coming down. We didn't eat breakfast. We didn't eat lunch. We were at the river all day.
I mentioned your name to Joe D. Reba, Mr. Reba, who works at the bowling alley in the back. And he said, oh, I remember that, boy. I said, is it good or bad? He said, oh, it was all good. He said, I always saw him just jumping right into that river. He loved, and he said he was a little bitty boy, and he just loved to be at that river.
Yeah.
He said, why are you asking about Rick? I said, well, told him what we're getting ready to do, and he said, that's a fine young man.
I appreciate it.
And I thought, that's a lot of good to say about you. Now, I want to get it clear. Your father has passed.
Yes, ma'am.
Your mother is still
Yes.
alive.
I have one other sibling, Apollonia, which
I've heard her name.
yes, she passed away. Also, my
Yes.
sister.
When I asked you the other day, Blanco wasn't your choice.
Right.
Tell me what you meant by that.
I meant when my parents came over, I wasn't even born yet, so I didn't have a choice where I would be right now if it wasn't for where they had chosen, or God's grace took them, to meet Mr. Claypeck here, and I think that by itself says everything about this town. The people here we're just different.
Tell me how.
Because you don't see a lot of racism. You don't see a lot of my dad probably would have had a whole lot of bad stuff to say, but every time we've ever talked about anything, you have nothing bad to say about anybody. Mr. McLean was an awesome man. Mr. Claypeck was awesome. When the sons, Jim and Bob, took over, he said that it was my brothers worked there. I think everybody in my family worked at one time or another.
At Claypeck's?
I remember working at Claypeck's during the summers.
What did you do?
I was a grunt.
Okay.
I did whatever my brother told me to do because he was running. I remember when Big Jim would walk into the greenhouses out at the river, which was not the headquarters at the time because they've switched everything.
Right.
And I remember he'd walk through. He goes, "Hey, Jesse's boy." I was like, "Yeah, get to work." I was like, "All right, no problem."
I met him, and he was a force to be reckoned with.
Yes.
Our second month in Blanco, I decided to go to the school board meeting, and walked in, and Jim was running the meeting, and there was nobody there but the board and me. And as soon as I stepped in, he stopped everything and he said, "Who the hell are you?" And I said, "I'm Martha Hurden, and we've just moved to Blanco, and our son's going to be going to school, and I just wanted to speed the meeting." "Oh, all right, sit down. Don't say anything. We'll get this meeting going." Yes, sir. And that was Jim.
Yeah.
But he also had a heart
Yes.
that was huge.
Yeah.
Just an amazing man.
Mm-hmm. He's the one. My older brother Eddie, Jim Claypeck, Mr. Claypeck. He was about work. If you did your work and you busted your tail doing it, that's how you got up with him.
Got ahead.
My brother didn't have. He had a high school education, but Mr. Claypeck saw the work ethic that he had, same as my dad. My dad was over here at the river with Robert Claypeck.
Right.
And he moved Eddie up, and eventually ended up running the greenhouses out there for a while for him. And Eddie knew his job.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what Jim liked.
Did you experience discrimination in school?
No, I can't say one time that I did.
Now, have you experienced it as a grown man out in the workforce?
Probably a few times. I mean, I can't recollect them. I know that it wasn't here in Blanco, but because I work in Austin. But yeah, I think there's probably a few times that I have, but it was more out of anger. Somebody tends to say a racial slur because they don't know what else to say. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
That type.
And I want to know how you handle that.
Well, because I work for the highway department, I just keep my mouth shut and keep driving, or stay in the truck, because you can't.
You can't do anything.
Right, you can't do anything.
Well, you're right, because you could, let's say you did stop the truck, and let's say you did get out, and,
Right.
and you did take care of it. You would have had a physical altercation, but
Right.
it would have probably escalated and made things worse.
Yeah, I would have lost
And
my job.
that's the sadness of it, because
Right.
I was raised to believe that all men are equal.
Right.
My father, and I was raised in the country. We
Right.
grew up hard. And I really recall him teaching me that.
Mhm.
And to never ever be looking down at anybody. I wasn't
Right.
me. He said, you're never better than anybody. Just work hard.
Well, I remember, I know you're going to remember Father John Finn.
Yes, I do.
I remember attending Mass one time. He was there, and he was talking about love, kind of like Father Justin did this last Sunday.
Right.
And it was almost the exact same thing. If you're gonna love all the way. You know, there's no halfway of doing it. Jesus didn't love you halfway; He loved you all the way. Mm-hmm. So, and I try to, now that I'm older, because I know I can understand things better. But that's how I try to live my life now. Just
what I hear in you is that you have really, I think, two fine parents, really, and some tough brothers.
Right.
Molded you into.
Well, the good thing is I didn't
very
get
fine man.
Right. I didn't get in a whole lot of trouble with my brothers because I knew as long as at the house I maintained the respect that my mom and my dad earned and deserved, I was going to be fine at the house. I didn't have a reason to act out on my parents for no apparent reason, you know. So I didn't get a whole lot of.
What do you see in I want your opinion of the younger Hispanic generation coming up now? Let's just say the teenagers. Mm-hmm. What is it that you see in them that makes you feel good or bad?
I don't know if I have an opinion on it. Honestly, because I haven't really interacted with them other than my kids and my cousin's kids. As far as that goes, I try to instill the same values and make sure that they're understanding everything the way my parents did me.
I hear that. Now, what I want to know in you is what drives the importance that you feel in doing it. I can tell it's very important to you to
Yes.
instill that. So, can you describe that to me?
Just be a good human being. There's no reason for hate. Even if somebody is maliciously trying to hurt you, as a younger man, you probably couldn't tell me that, and I understand it. You see what I mean? When
Yes,
I was
I do.
younger,
Yes,
I don't think if I myself could go back in time and tell myself this, I'd be like, whatever. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? This guy.
Well,
don't know.
that's what I think I'm saying is that sometimes I'll see, in teenagers is that they won't look you in the eye.
Right.
They're basically their hand is
Right.
in front of a machine, and I'm thinking, how are you going to learn to say hello,
Right.
respect, yes
Right.
ma'am, no ma'am, thank you?
Right. Okay,
Because
I see what you're
you've got to
saying.
get out in that world and
Right.
exist like that.
Well, there's almost like an unspoken rule in Mexican families.
Okay.
If you show up at a party, a birthday party, quinceañera, wedding, whatever, you pretty much make the rounds to all the friends that are your parents' friends, and you shake their hand and you say, "How are you?" and all this other stuff. So I tell my girls, we get to the house, you better tell all your uncles, aunts, cousins, you tell everybody hello, you look them in the eye, you tell them hi. And it's just a respect thing, you know. I remember when I was younger, it was almost like automatic. They didn't even have to tell me. As soon as I went right behind my mom or my dad, and I was shaking hands, and it was just like, it's just something you just did.
You had some fine examples. I can tell it. Rick, I want to ask you, being in Blanco for the length of time that you have, tell me about some of the things that you've seen and changes in Blanco that stand out the most to you.
Okay. Well, I can tell you right now the things that I don't like.
Okay. That changes that have happened?
Yes.
Okay, let's go.
I don't like the Sonic. I don't like the Subway. It's not the Blanco that I grew up in. I don't like, I guess, the greed behind the scenes that's making all this stuff happen and stuff like that.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessary. Yes, the schools have to get bigger because there's more kids. I can understand that. That's a give me. That's not a big deal. But I just don't understand. Next thing we're gonna have is a McDonald's here. I remember somebody. I'm not gonna mention their name. They're like, yeah, I wish that Stripes would have had the McDonald's in it. I was like, well, drive 10 minutes down the road and there's a McDonald's over there, close to 46. And I said, I just don't understand it. I personally don't like it because I like the Blanco that I grew up in.
Tell me about the Blanco you grew up in.
The Blanco I grew up in was we could walk through the park, no problem. There was a fence over here that had its own gap for people who walked in.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
That's where we got in. You didn't have to jump the fence or feel like anything. I mean, you can still walk through the park. You start on one end or the other. Just cruise the park if you want. You know what I mean? That's the Blanco I remember. I remember Peanuts. Mr. What is his name? Tucker Jones.
Yes.
Okay, they have the property on the hill and then
That's
down
right.
the Peanuts. I remember going down there and washing my dad's truck on the bottom because you could go to the flats right
Yes,
there.
yes.
Me and my brothers, he'd take us down there and we'd wash the truck and then we'd get to swim all day long afterwards. It was the deal. That's the Blanco that I remember. Just being able to go wherever, do whatever, not, I remember some of the cops it was just like, hey, you need a ride home? Like, no, I'm just walking. I didn't know if I was in trouble or not, you know what I mean? But
Right.
they would give you a ride home if you wanted one. And going to the Dairy Queen at times, you'd go, I remember when I was little, you go and it's like, hey, can I have a cone? And they'd give you the little baby cones for free.
Right.
Now everything, it's just, some things have changed. I made a joke with my wife. I was like, I'm going to ask for one of those. They're like, no, sir, we don't have those. I was like, what a jip, But
Well, I was kind of active in finding out about Sonic coming to Blanco.
yeah,
I was working with that Planning and Zoning Commission, and one thing I wanted to know was why.
right.
What you're just saying. And I took the man aside and I said, tell me why you're doing this, because it didn't seem quite logical to me either. And he said, we've watched Blanco for a long, long time. And he said, the time is here. And he said, not only will there be a Sonic, there will be a Pizza Hut, there will be a Whataburger, there will be a McDonald's. He said, your town is getting ready to explode. And I knew, I lived here, my husband and I, and the saying we learned, we didn't say it, but we heard it very quickly. I sure wish we could put up a chain across 281 right there across the river and then just stop all that growth coming in. And this is 30 years ago. We can't do that anymore.
No,
It's here.
right.
So, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself, first of all, staying in Blanco?
Oh, yeah.
So here you are, a man that told me it wasn't my choice.
Right.
It was your parents. And now this is home for you. I see that.
Yes. You want me to tell you why it's my home?
Yes, I do.
Because of what's across your driveway. That's my church. That's where I'm going to go. I'm most comfortable on Sundays in that church. Other than when I'm at home with my wife and kids, of course. But Sundays is my day. I love my seat. That's my pew. And
Well, I would say that pew is part of your roots.
right.
Now that you've told me about it.
Right.
Rick, could you see yourself being involved in the future of Blanco?
Not really.
Why?
Only because
Because you really do have a very good insight.
right. But at the same time, I've had friends ask me to be on school board, to be on other boards here and there and that, and I try to stay away from that stuff because I learned when I was younger that if I put myself in a position to make, I don't know if I can say make an ass of myself, more than likely I will, because I'm very, how do I say this? I'm very just, if if I tell you I love you, it's because I mean it.
Yes.
But if I tell you I dislike you, it's because I mean it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna tell you.
Yeah.
What, and sometimes 9 times out of 10, I don't think before I say.
Well, I'm hearing what you're saying because in the political aspect of it,
Right.
school board, city,
Right.
you do have to stop and think before you say something.
Yes. Yes.
It's just the beast. It's the beast. It's
Right.
part of it.
And you know, what I've noticed too from being younger is America's become real sensitive on pretty much everything. You can't say anything without almost getting sued or something like that. And at my house, it was just like, hey, you know, keep your mouth shut. And it's also, I don't want to put myself in that position to ruin the name that my mom and dad have built so hard or worked so hard for. So if I was to stain it in any way, then I would feel responsible. And I don't want to put myself in that position to rub people the wrong way. Something, you know what I mean?
I do know.
It's not that I don't think that I can make a difference in that way. I just don't want to put myself to where it would.
You stop and think about your heritage and your parents, what they've taught you is the crux of you.
Right.
And that is something that you hold on to that you do not want to destroy.
Right.
And there's not many men your age that think that way. There's very few that I've come across.
Right.
So it speaks highly of you.
Thank you.
You have a paper there
Yeah.
with looks like a lot of different names on it. And that
Yeah.
you want to share this with us?
Well, before we got started, I was telling you about my dad and mother being married in the church here.
Yes.
Father Edward married my mom and dad.
Do you know the year?
No, I don't. But you know, what's funny is my dad had passed away, and it was probably about 2 months ago. Somebody dropped off a picture at the house, and it was Father Edward between my mom and dad were the day that they had gotten married.
Oh.
And it was just my mom and dad and the compadres, the witnesses to them, and that was it.
That was it.
Yeah, it was just, I got, from what my mom says, it was just like a regular quick ceremony, you know, and got it done. There's no big elaborate dress or none of that stuff. But yeah, he married them here. Originally there was 8 of us. I lost my oldest sister, which was the oldest sibling, period, Apollonia. My youngest one was born in '85, which is Simona. She, other than that, you know, my parents came over. They worked for Mr. McLean first. They went climb more. Do you remember Maggie Glow?
Yes, I do. I've heard the name. I
They
don't
worked-
remember her, but I've heard the name.
They worked for her for a little bit. Yeah. Then they worked, and of course my dad worked for LBJ.
You know, that's a pretty heavy-duty distinction to work for LBJ,
Yeah.
if you think about it. Now, if you were to say that to a group of teenagers nowadays, they'd probably say, what? First they have to say, who's LBJ?
Right.
You
I have
know.
to say it was like, imagine yourself being 15 years old and working for President Obama. Working.
There you would make the distinction.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know,
Working, like actual work, not...
my mother followed LBJ from the time that he was a teenager.
Really?
And she thought he just was fantastic. And she remembers being at High, Texas, and standing there watching him give a speech.
I heard about
So
that.
that's how I learned about LBJ and the importance, you know, of respecting our leaders. My dad would tell me, like, when they would go to vote at the polls, I was not allowed. None of the children were allowed inside. And I never could understand it. So I said, well, what's the problem? And he said, what we're doing in there, that is a privilege.
Right.
It's a very important thing we're doing. And
That's
when
why I vote.
And
every
he
year.
said, when you get to vote, you do that. You don't ever neglect that.
Right.
And man, that stuck with me
Yeah.
like glue.
Yeah.
I've never forgotten it. I'm proud to be able to do that. You know?
Me too. I wish we could vote for Americans, not Republicans and Democrats.
Yes,
you know
that
what I
would
mean?
be nice.
That's one thing I wish we could
That would be nice. Now I'm going to ask you another question. I want your opinion. How do you see, let's take the issue of the border, people still trying to come over, find a way to make a living. What do you see the future of that being?
You can't stop it.
It'll continue.
It's going to continue.
How do you feel about it?
It doesn't bother me because I know that they're not coming over here to commit crimes. I know that the drug end of it, if we didn't do drugs, there wouldn't be that problem. You know what I mean?
You're right.
But
You're right.
people do drugs, so there's a demand for it. But as far as the people who are crossing the border, they're coming here to work. I don't, it's rare that you hear, I've never even heard of it, that illegal immigrants coming not to work, just to smuggle drugs. You see them getting all the time on TV. Like, matter of fact, this morning they were talking about it. It was some of them being deported after they just got caught, and some of them being kids, 14, 15 years old. I was like, imagine that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have a problem with it.
I wanted to ask you so I don't forget. Tell me about your job. What you do for work.
I work for the Texas Department of Transportation.
How long have you done that?
Fixing to be 14 years.
You're working on retirement.
No.
No?
I'll be there a long time. I noticed about 4 or 5 years ago, I started taking notice that the men that work at the highway department in maintenance anyways, you see them, they'll get 34, 35 years, and people are like, what the heck is he doing? He's paying the highway department to work there now. But then I noticed the people that retire, they're eligible to retire, and they retire and they leave. But then you see them at the Walmart,
Yes.
and they're doing, and I'm like, well,
Yes.
what did you leave for? There's a guy right now in San Marcos. He has something like 45 years in
With the
highway department. Wow. And he's not going nowhere. He doesn't care.
He wants to work there till he drops.
Right. That's just the way it is. Because I have a feeling, he's never said this, but my personal opinion is that he's not leaving because what's he going to do if he retires? Maybe he doesn't have, his kids are grown. He lives in a house by himself. What's he going to do? Twiddle his thumb all day. And this way he's got, I guess you could say, a reason to live. He likes his job. There's not hard. The machines do all the work.
I think it's probably a fair thing to say that Spanish is spoken in your home.
Yeah.
Good.
My mom's house.
And your mom's home.
Mm-hmm.
What about your home?
My kids don't understand it, so it's kind of hard.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. No, if everything was, if I knew that my kids would not be harmed, I would do what my parents did when I was little. Because they couldn't just quit work during the summer. I remember they would take us, we'd be down there for the 3 months of the summer with my aunt. I remember before I left one time, I'd call my aunt Mom. Because that's just the way it was when I was younger. I'd do that with my kids. Because the only way to really learn it is to be it and be around it.
Okay, so I think I misunderstood you, but I'm getting it now. You're saying for your girls to truly understand the Spanish culture and the language, you would need to go back to Mexico with them?
Mm-hmm.
And it's too dangerous, in your opinion?
The town that we're at isn't. It's getting there. The whole border town deal and all that, that's the part that I don't want to risk or even chance. You know what I mean?
Do they ask about it?
My oldest one is asked. My little one's too young. I don't think my little one's ever been there. I think she was when she was a baby, but that was it.
Do they understand their heritage?
Not really.
Well, I would say, Rick, from what that you've just told me
Right.
today, that
I'm
you
gonna have
have a
to-
job ahead of you.
I do. I do. You know, I hear them make comments every now and then at the house, though.
Go ahead.
Like my oldest one the other day, she goes, "Dad, that's the Mexican in me now." I'm like, I was like, "Come on, man, it's just crazy." Cracks me up.
Was it like she was saying she was aware of, like, that's something in me?
Yeah, she knew. She knows. She's half, and you know, like I said, I wear like my Mexico jersey or something like that, or my Mexico hat, and that's when something will come out. But she knows. She knows that I still have pride in where my parents came from. You know, and like I said, I lived down there in the summers, 3 months at a time when I was little, and I love it down there. If I could, I'd go every chance I got.
Well, I would say, Rick, if I were to give you a word of advice, it would be pass that, if nothing else,
Right.
pass the memories on. Because there will come a time that your girls will ask.
Right.
And you've got a tremendous amount of information and heritage inside you.
This is just a little bit of it too.
That's just a little bit. Now, I'm not done with you yet, almost, but I want to know, tell me how you think you will adjust to what is coming for Blanco and the growth. How you can make it to where it's the best of both worlds for you and the way you feel about it.
Well, honestly, because I don't like it doesn't mean that I can't accept it. I'm a grown man. I'm not a little kid. I understand that there's money and greed and all that stuff going behind it, and yeah, that's just the way it is. It's gonna grow. It's gonna grow. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it to stop it. If I can help it, I don't need it, Sonic. The only time we stop there is
Very
if my
good.
kids need something, you know. I think
So Sonic really, that's pretty, I can tell that kind of sticks. That's
only because you know any of Dripping Springs,
yes, that's where I went to high school.
terrible.
And it was nothing like
They
that.
ruined that town.
I agree. I agree.
What's another one? You know, I don't understand how Johnson City. It's because of the people there don't want all that stuff. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it. But people settle for it because somebody's getting money somewhere.
Yeah, it seems like it's a very
Right.
quiet working around the edges. Okay, now I've got two questions for you.
Okay.
I'm seeing if I can figure out a way how to ask them. You consider yourself to be American.
Yes.
Tell me what that means to you.
It means everything that my dad had hoped for, had dreamed for, had set out to do when he was a younger man. As long as I represent and the name that he established here, I think that that's on him, not so much, but yes, him. The American dream, I'm living it. And I don't have to have the American dream, you know, and I don't have to have the big house. I know where I came from. I know what the real America is about. Not everything that's getting, you know, you watch the news, everything's negative.
Everything's negative.
They don't show, you know.
There is good.
Yeah.
A lot of good.
And you know, you hear about Mexico, all you hear is the bad stuff. They don't know, like my aunts and uncles and everybody in that hometown, that there's good people. They're hardworking people, and just like anywhere else. And my dad came over here for a reason and a purpose, and to make everything better for his family. It was a big task, and he did it. I couldn't ask for more. Like I said, I was glad I got to thank him for it before he passed.
Yes.
Because if not, I wouldn't have never had my pew in the church. My kids would not have this awesome school that they go to. There's no telling what my life would have been like in Mexico had my dad not taken such a big old bite out of that apple.
And tried to grab
Right.
the train.
Right.
Now, how do you feel about, if I say, do you consider yourself a Mexican American?
Yes.
Can you describe that to me?
Well, when I was younger, it was easier to explain, but it didn't have as much meaning as it does now that I'm older and I think about stuff more. When I was younger, I'm Mexican American because of my blood that goes through my veins. My mom and dad are from Mexico, and that makes me Mexican. The blood that went through their veins is the same one that goes through mine, so that makes me a Mexican. But at the same time, I was born in Fredericksburg, Texas, thank God, and that makes me an American. So I have, I guess you could say, the best of both. The pride that I carry with my parents is something that, you know, Mexican people have in Mexico, the good, hard-working Mexican people, and the pride that I carry being an American is the good, hard-working people of America. That it's hard to explain, because if there were words for it, I would be spilling them out right now. That's why I'm kind of in a stuttering mode. You
haven't stuttered. You've done a great job.
America is everybody. You know, you're always going to have people who dislike you for the good things and stuff that you have. And I've always felt when I was younger that people didn't like Americans because we have it so good. I love this country. Unfortunately, I can't say I love the heritage of Mexico and everything that goes with that.
Right.
But I wasn't raised there. I don't live there. I don't participate in everything that goes on there. I don't have a home there. My kids aren't there. My wife isn't there. And so I'm Mexican American.
What is your wife's name?
Tara Lynn Calzoncit.
Beautiful name. What are your girls' names?
Caitlin Lynn Calzoncit and Ashlyn Ann Calzoncit.
My middle name happens to be Lynn.
Yeah.
Martha Lynn. Wouldn't have figured that.
Yeah.
Is there a question I haven't asked you that you wanted me to ask you?
Honestly, I didn't know what you were going to ask me.
What have you thought of some of the questions? How are you?
Oh, it's a piece of cake. I was expecting harder questions. I didn't know what.
Such as?
That's what I mean. I didn't know what. I just didn't know. I didn't know exactly what was gonna happen. But when I told you in the church, I was ready though. You know what I mean? I didn't. Wasn't gonna chicken out on you and skip or nothing like that. But it's just.
Well, I think, Rick, that you have sat here today and you have done something tremendous. Because to share the information, you took us back a long, long way in your heritage. And not many people get to do that.
Right.
Now, I get to walk into church on a Sunday morning and I get to look over at that pew. And the first thing I see is Rick.
Right.
With Bible open.
Right.
And
that you gave me.
That I gave you.
Yeah.
And what I want to say is that for the city of Blanco and this community, there could not be a finer man in its midst right now. And I believe that you will leave your mark on this town, without a doubt.